project a little maybe about where you see. I mean, the camera thing was really interesting, and so I'm wondering where you see like the accelerometer and GPS and the camera and all this sort of.
I think you're going to see a big push as far as the wireless devices going to people taking their health into their own hands. They're going to be taking these devices home. They're going to be plugging them into their smartphones, or if they have an iPad, and they'll be sending these results to their doctors, saying, here's my results from this test. I have high blood pressure, so here's the telemetry from my cardiac monitor for the past month. Measuring them while at home, while I'm at sleep, and this gives a very good baseline as far as what the doctor has at access, rather than saying, all right, well, we tested you for 5 minutes while you were in our office, but now they'll have access to say, let me see what your heart rate does over, say, a month or a week. And then, what is it? Yeah. Then there's also a lot of smaller devices coming out. So as more devices come out, it's only going to become, the data is going to become more and more available. So like I say, I want to see people who might be at risk for hypertension. I'm going to take the baselines from 100 people who I know don't have hypertension, and the person who I think might be susceptible to it, I'll say, give me a month's worth of your cardiac data, and I'll see how you compare against the baseline, and look for any abnormalities.
So how does the customer know there's a doctor doing diagnosis, or do they even care?
Well, I mean, somebody's going to have to be looking at that, but and that would be where you say you come in and say, I'm having heart problem, I'm having chest pain, or I'm having high heart rate, and take a look at it.
Matt, do you mind if I jump in?
Yes, this is one of the other co-founders. This is Zanko Klapko.
Hi, my name is Zanko. Thanks, Matt, for doing the presentation. There's a few use cases that you can use. There are studies, there's the whole telehealth. So these programs are going to be brought on by doctors, and they will screen patients, identify certain groups, risk factors, and allow them to create home applications with the devices. Right now, there's one customer that is putting on a study for meditation and heart rate.
Already got that one.
Oh, you did that?
Yep.
Okay. And so being able to include documentation about the effects of meditation and heart rate in the app, so that they can read over, look at the scientific articles linked to them, so that people can find out more information. Being able to record the study data on the device and display the graph, something that they can visually connect to, as well as send the results back to the doctor's servers and have them do a more professional analysis of it, and then from there recommend additional treatment. It also fits into compliance. Many patients may say that, yeah, I'm take my meds, I'm doing what I'm supposed to, but having an electronic copy shows that, wow, Tuesday, Wednesday you skipped, and you really need to be doing this every day.
So are you seeing anything Google Goggle-like for diagnosis, or is it, what's this rash kind of thing?
Sure. We could definitely do that, take pictures of it, send it to the doctor. There's 100 use cases out there, and we're pretty excited about getting into it. There's specific studies or questions.
But also there's a certain amount of trade-off in that the more that the patient does at home, the less they actually need to go to the office, but at the same time, the more detailed their care becomes. So there's kind of like a balance issue where, the doctor's like, well, they're doing all this stuff at home and they're not coming in as frequently, but at the same time, the quality of healthcare is also improving significantly because of this trade-off. So it's kind of a nice balancing act.
Right. In telehealth in large cities, there may not be enough doctors for everyone due to population. So being able to remotely gather these statistics and send it to doctors, whether they can more easily process them or do that, is beneficial.
I think he had it.
A lot of the questions that are being asked are based around how this helps end users, consumers, really. You also got to think about it to decide where the question earlier about this really improved is when you're talking about tablet-based. Verizon recently just released the new pager system that they're working with Zimbit Wireless-based in Greenville, where the problems were the old pager system, you couldn't tell whether doctors were getting messages back and forth being paged. So now you're talking about, as opposed to, now you're talking about a doctor walking around with an iPad or a Kindle or whatever, and you're sending him a message like surgery, for now, et cetera, or he's walking around. Every time you go to a doctor's office, and you go to visit, what's the first thing they do? They sit down 5 to 6 minutes, they're logging onto a computer, they're checking everything, they're pulling up your charts, et cetera, as opposed to an iPad where he's walking around, where he's constantly walking. So I'm going from one room to the next, I'm literally punching in a client's name, sending that request to an asynchronous web server, and then it's pulling every single thing I need down to the device, so you're saving time efficiently for doctors as well. They don't have to, that iPad is synced up to their email accounts. They're getting reminders of where they're supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just for the consumer, it's also doctors working more efficiently with that same time.
You also put like QR codes on the doorway. They walk in, they take a snapshot of it, and it pulls it up automatically.
I have a question, Mike.
Yep.
Have you dealt with the FDA and their requirements for medical applications?
We have not. We have, as a company, we have not had to deal with them yet because we're still kind of merging or getting into the medical field. So it's,
Anybody in this room dealt with the FDA for the medical applications? 66601. Is there, I guess that's something to consider when you're considering medical applications. And I was in DC, and I'm not an expert at all, but I think that I kind of got interested in apps thinking there were not FDA requirements, and there certainly are. And in fact, they have said that anything that connects to an FDA device, so if you're connecting to a heart monitor that's class 2, then your device has to go through FDA class 2 certification. And when they were making that argument, I kind of raised my hand and said, well, then the internet would have to be. And they were there's definitely going to be a regulatory
thought process there.
I think if anybody's interested in developing an app, I would just say to contact TUV in advance, probably on the beginning of the architecture, instead of having something that needs to be ready and then having the FDA come in and put it in.
On a similar vein, a question about clinic readiness of these devices. We're considering putting these devices in the hands of a busy medical clinic in multiple, perhaps 10 or 15 devices around the clinic. Are they robust enough? Are there sort of the charging harnesses for it? Are there location-specific devices that stop them from being stolen? What are the practical aspects of introducing these into a medical environment?
the durability is obviously a big factor because you don't want to introduce, say, a small device that's going to be easily broken, or, for example, the iPads that have glass screens, because they're just going to get absolutely destroyed the first time somebody drops one. So durability, like I said, there's a lot of available options that are very durable. Unfortunately, a lot of those are, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, most of them are Windows-based. There are probably several Linux varieties. But as far as actual theft prevention, a lot of the time, that one's kind of a tough issue. It's like how do you prevent theft? And it's kind of, yeah, I mean, you can RFID them, but that still brings in the question of still being able to retrieve them once they've actually left your premises. You can do the phone home option, where the device will periodically, if it detects an open wireless network, it'll try to send its GPS location. And then there's just with the phone home option, you can just brick it. The other option is you can have some kind of biometric login that has with encrypted data, so that even if they do have access to the device, it's not accessible to them. So there's a lot of different ways to go about that.
Do you see a bigger market for sterilizing the device? I mean, because if you've got something that's gone through, God only knows how many people's
hands.
Medical center. Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely. You don't want to necessarily touch it per se. So. Yeah.
Tendency of the iPad becomes personal, so the clinicians tend to take much better care of that than a laptop. For whatever reason, these attendees will be close to them, want to let it out of their eyesight.
That's fine for a mission-centric device, but if you're going to put them in the hands, as we talked about the others, a whole new set of issues.
You really just solved that problem. As far as that, you really solved that problem with just any information that looks at the device and encrypted, and any local data, you just store it, you just cache it, so that if you were to get stolen, pretty much it wipes all the data. As soon as it registers that there's no internet access, it just clears your cache, and then everything's encrypted. So pretty much
security protocols that are going to be in place on your system is that if it gets stolen, it's basically just loot across the iPad.
I'm just curious from an industry standpoint, last year, most of the EHR vendors and that were all about upgrading systems for meaningful use. I've heard now a lot of them are putting major development dollars into bigger applications on apps. Do you have any, or does anybody have any visibility of what platform they're going to? Because, you know, in hospitals, clinics, and that problem, you know, long ago was, you know, you had Sun OS, you had all these different operating systems, workstations, and eventually got down to, because of space and that, it all went to Windows, pretty much.
Yeah. I think
in a hospital, I don't see them in a clinic carrying 3 pads around.
Yeah.
So it's either going to be somebody's going to win, or they're going to go to web-based.
Yeah. Depending on what their, I guess, financial needs or financial budgets are, it can go a lot of different ways. The problem, each of them has a problem. For example, the problem with the iPad is that you have to get, go through Apple. The problem with the Android is that a lot of the encryption and like DRM and a lot of methodologies aren't there, and it's open, and some people don't like the idea of not having a walled-in area. You have Palm, which just came out, so that one's kind of up in the air. So there's a very strong potential that a lot of these EHR are actually going to move online with maybe some kind of like weak client that they just install locally on a device that doesn't necessarily do much but connects to the back end and just gets all of its information about how to lay out the screen from the web.
I'd like to sell you mine.
If not, I'd like to thank Matt very much indeed, and we actually have to score